Hey everybody, it's DM Mike, and let's talk about Chapter 6, Part 2, The Castle. Hey everybody, welcome back to the tip section for Hoard of the Dragon Queen. This is part 2 of Chapter 6. Part 1 focused on the swamp. Part 2 is going to focus on the castle crawl. Now, there's a couple things we need to cover here when looking at this. I'm going to be looking down at a Google Doc here, just make sure I'm not losing my place. I'm getting all my ideas out there for you. First of all, these tips are not to tell you exactly how to run this adventure. That's crazy. I don't know your players. I don't know the context. I don't know the decisions they've made. I don't even know your DM style, right? So take what you can from this and burn the rest, pretty much is what I would agree. Well, what I would suggest. Anyway, let's talk about this. I'm going to be referencing the book and my Google Doc. Now, first of all, there is a lot of information in this chapter, right? Just the dungeon crawl itself. And this is maybe geared more towards new DMs, but first of all, let's be frank. You cannot memorize this. Input. Don't think for a second you can memorize the entire layout of the castle in each and every room. Running this castle just recently, I realized my aversion to dungeon crawls. And what I typically don't like is how they slow down the game. I have to go in here and go, wait a minute, oh, you're in room 13B.6? Let me look here. Oh, there's nothing in there. I mean, obviously you do descriptions and whatnot, but I realized this is what I hate about dungeon crawls, is because I lose a little bit of control. And not meaning I'm making the characters do things, but I lose control of pacing. It slows the game down. Maybe you feel the same way. I've been trying to identify, like, why is this so annoying to me? Well, it's because I have to do this. Oh, no. You know, like, just going through this piece by piece by piece. I hate it. I hate how it destroys my pacing, and players have to wait on me, even though I've read the chapter, to figure out what is in, 1C outer ward, right? So how do we handle this information? Okay, first of all, I'm not gonna memorize it, right? Well, there's been a couple suggestions that I've seen in how to do this. First of all, you're not gonna be able to stop doing this. Just looking into the book, it's gonna be difficult. One way you can do this is read the section, right? Read level 1 and go ahead and make a bullet point. Maybe I'll put an image up of one of the things I did here. A bullet point in Google Docs, it just says, this is the room, this is what's in it. And meaning, if there's a chest in there, if there's a trap, write the DC numbers, and that's it. That's all you put in that room. You put the name of the room and just the important bits. That's it, right? So that's one way of doing it, okay? 2, I've heard people who have the DM's version of the map. They will put all that information into the DM's map. So again, probably bullet point style really is what it is, but it's just directly onto the map instead of an extra handout for you, right? So that's another way of doing it. A third way is, this felt like defacing a national monument, but is to go in and, as you can see here, kind of go in and highlight all the important bits. This was kind of painful, but I went through each room and just said, okay, here's the DC number, here's exactly what's important. Some people have used different types of highlighters. Like, for instance, I just used orange. I don't know why. It was the highlighter that was closest to me. Some people will use, like, let's say, a blue highlighter for treasure, maybe a red highlighter for a trap, and maybe just a yellow for general descriptions or something that's maybe just slightly important but not game breaking in the room, right? So that's another method you could do. I think there was a fourth method, but right now, let me check my thing here. Maybe I'm missing something. Highlight, annotate directly. Oh, okay. So the other one I was thinking of was making index cards. I did this pretty early on for a single one shot a year ago. It was a little bit of a dungeon crawl, so I had to take index cards, and I would just write, again, 1Q, 1P, 1O, Archer's Gallery, and put whatever was in there, and then I'll be done with that index card and get it out of the way. So that's another method. So do not try to memorize this. It's a lot. It's a hell of a lot, and it's okay. It's okay to slow the game down. That was just my personal beef with it. I can't stand pacing being ruined and going through the game like you're stuttering through it.
The car. The car. No hurry. Sing it. Sing.
Now we've highlighted everything. We know what's coming our way. Now this part is, it's hard to recommend, what to do next at this point, because I think there's 4 major ways your characters are going to enter this castle, right? At least 4 major ways that I thought of. Your characters may do something wildly different. I mean, come on, what characters don't? But there are 4 major ways, I think. First of all, it's sneaking in. This will be incredibly difficult because outside the castle, you've got dozens of bullywugs, you've got dozens of lizard folk, and of course, people up in the towers and the castles all keeping watch, right? So this is going to be very difficult. But maybe, perhaps, because the dice have always got a different story to tell, maybe they manage to sneak through, right? So that's one option they have, is to get in, right? Or they can maybe even sneak around the side of the castle at the back and try to find some kind of way in, right? Next, I think, is brute force. Actually, that's probably the first one that probably around 50% of players probably do, is brute force it. Go in and just start a fight. They don't care. They're going to go in, just see what they can do. And that's going to lead really to a team party kill or capture. 3, they can do infiltration, disguising themselves as cultists and coming right through the front door practically and start scoping out the castle, exploring the castle, and probably can get pretty deep and far, if not through the entirety of the castle without even getting caught. So, I mean, of course, that's up to DM, right? Flavor and how the attitudes of your NPCs and what's going on at the castle at the time. And the 4th one is which my characters did, which I think a majority, maybe 70% of the people that are playing this end up doing, is having some kind of civil war or just a war, skirmish, a battle outside the castle once they've aligned themselves with Snapjaw and the clans. Now, that's what my characters did. They aligned themselves with Snapjaw, and it wasn't an easy thing. They had to go get the Rings of Mirkul from the cult of from this undead sanctuary, which you can see on the channel, the map and everything associated with that. That helped unite the clans because they weren't just going to go throw their lives away and just go running up there to do something. They needed to have a reason, a cause, a sign, if you will, because of their shamanistic ways. They needed to see a sign. So they allied. And then, of course, because they assaulted the castle, they created a distraction, and the players got in that way, right? And actually what they did anyway, even though there was a distraction, they snuck in on the right side of the castle and just climbed up and got in the castle. Now, what did this do? That's the key thing. What do all these different decisions do? Well, for me, I can only speak to this one. I can only speak to the war outside and what happens to the castle. In my campaign, what this allowed to do, what allowed for my characters, well, the experience they had in the castle, was that the castle was empty. I mean, it was primarily empty. Of course, I left some enemies in there, right? It was important to leave some guard behind in the castle, especially way up top when they're still throwing down spears and arrows. But it actually allowed them to sneak through the castle far easier, right? There weren't a lot of guards around. And that was a choice that was made. Look, if they would have maybe just snuck in or infiltrated, I would have kept everybody in there, right? Because there's no reason for them to leave. But, they had to keep somebody behind to guard the treasure and stuff. So that just cleared up a lot of conflict, and they were able to go through pretty darn easily. All right, but here's the thing. Here's the thing about the castle. Don't be afraid. Let me jump to the next thing. Don't be afraid to mod it, right? Mod the castle. If you're like me, you're having an aversion to heavy, thick dungeon crawls that just take up so much time and just, take forever to do. Mod it, all right? Take stuff out. And of course, that depends on how your characters enter the castle. That's why I wanted to start with that. Because maybe you could still mod things, but it really depends on what they do, right? As all things in Dungeons & Dragons and how we run our stories. If you don't want too many encounters, then get rid of them. Nix the cultists, nix some bullywugs, nix some of the lizard folk that are hanging around in there. You don't need all this stuff. I had several rooms with cave-ins. That's another thing you can do, right? It's an old castle. Things are crumbling and tearing, falling apart and whatnot. I had several areas that I felt like they're kind of a waste of time. Like they go to this room, okay, they know it's a arrow crafting place, but there's nothing in there. So, okay, let's move on to the next thing, right? So I created cave-ins, if you will, in different areas, just to seal them off, to shrink down the amount of time they were in the castle and the amount of time we're sitting there dungeon crawling. So that was one method. That's something maybe you could do. A cave-in, maybe it's flooded, maybe there's just too many nasty creatures in there. Okay, we're not going to mess with that room. Who wants to deal with 3 giant crocodiles? Things like that, right? Again, to speed up the crawl. And of course, yes, I left some enemies in there, so you don't want to empty it out completely. They're not going to leave the treasure inside the castle completely unguarded, right? So I had them, there's a huge portion of the map the main foyer or the courtyard there in the middle. It's not really a courtyard, it's interior, but I left some bullywugs in there, and there's a bullywug kind of armory off to the right. I did let that occupy. I think it was like 10 bullywugs the most. But then things started to heat up on the battlefield, so 3 or 4 left to go join, and yada yada yada, right? So stuff was going on, but they had at least some encounters to deal with, right? That's what I did. The underground. Let's talk about the underground. It's another huge maze. It's another huge encounter area. And if you're like me and you don't really want all this JRPG kind of, every 2 steps you're being assaulted by something, again, nix it. Think about it. What if they're up there and they're navigating the upper levels of the castle? They're dealing with all those encounters. Then they could finally go into the ground. They have a good idea of where they're going. And now they've got encounter after encounter after encounter. By the time they get to Rezimir, by the time they get to the portable, they're going to be exhausted. They're going to be exhausted immediately. Most likely, most spells will be burnt off and all kinds of things. So that's why I cut down. Matter of fact, I cut down the cavern, the underground, into one single room. The stairs that go down on the right side of the castle goes down into an ancient crypt, and you can see it here on the channel. Matter of fact, the backdrop I have right now is that portal I did in Tabletop Simulator, which you can see a time-lapse build on the channel in the Tabletop Simulator playlist. But I made it just one room. They didn't need to go through another set of giant frogs, another set of giant crocodiles, another set of giant centipedes, and whatever else, because look, they already did it in the swamp. They already did it from point A to point B, which was the castle. We've already kind of gone through that stuff. And sometimes multiple times, especially crocodiles. So it was time to okay, let's get rid of this stuff. Now, some of you enjoy dungeon crawls. Look, then don't do it. Don't do anything I've suggested. Just keep everything as is. But again, it gets into 2 areas, drama and pacing. I wanted to heighten the drama. They knew where they needed to go. It was one level down, and there was a big thing about to happen here with the conflict and the confrontation with Rezimir and Splattergoo and the rescue of the Fae. It was important, and I didn't want to delay it any longer. So there was the drama, right? But the pacing too. It's just, you have to get rid of it. I wanted to get rid of all that stuff because it was just getting in the way of the final confrontation, that drama. All right, so here we go. Let me double check things. I distilled it down to the ancient portal. Yes. I left the 2 heavies there, Rezimir and Splattergoo. You don't have to do this. I think that just depends on how your game unfolds. And I had a Rezimir, Splattergoo, and a cadre of bullywugs guarding the portal. Oh, and the portal and the castle. Again, another tip. I'm always going to have this tip, just so you know, it's always going to be a part of it. It's a great place for that mostly kind of ambient effects. Matter of fact, I would recommend not just environmental effects, but look into dark ambient music. That's actually really works really well in areas like this, deep underground caves where a great confrontation is about to happen. I found that to be really advantageous. On a whim, I kind of threw that on, and it really, really worked. So use atmospherics. So let's do this. Let's recap really fast on what I did and the tips I would give you that may or not help you, right? Who knows, right? So number 1, the crawl. Don't memorize it. Highlight it, use index cards, use a Google Doc, or annotate directly onto your map. I think all those things are great, but don't spend time memorizing. Mod the crawl. Again, it depends on how the characters enter the castle. But look, get rid of rooms, get rid of encounters, have cave-ins, have floods, get rid of stuff that is just extraneous. They don't need to go there, they don't need to deal with this if you want to get to the main conflict, right? So mod the crawl. And I think this goes into my 3rd tip. These kind of are back to back. You're also modding not just the castle, but the underground as well. I suggest really 2 reasons for drama and pacing. It's a lot of stuff for your characters to deal with, kind of like what happened in Greenest. It's just a lot of stuff. And as DMs, if we're worth our salt, we're going to edit and chop and cut and add in and take away, right? So that is it, guys. I got 3 tips for this. 3 tips for the castle. And I'm sure there's far more. And I think what affected the tips for this is that my characters took a different route. My characters did a different thing. Had this castle been filled with enemies, I probably would have had a longer list and a different list to give you. But let's say they have the battle outside and they're wandering in and you're short on time or you don't want to drag this out. Those are my best tips I can give you, all right? So guys, that's it. That's it for Chapter 6, Part 2, tips for the castle. I'm sorry it was short. I probably wasn't maybe as insightful as you needed, but of course my table play it out differently. We're now in chapters 7 and 8, and I'm going to combine those 2 chapters. I'm not sure about chapter 7. I kind of feel like it's, like I'm just not, I don't know, I'm not feeling it. You know, I really don't care about Talos the White and all that. I just, for some reason, I'm just kind of like, I kind of want to get to the castle, you know, again, well, the second castle, and start that encounter instead of just kind of fooling around over here and then going down to Parnast. It's a whole other thing. I'm still digesting. We just played last Friday. So anyway, guys, that's it. Thanks for watching. And the next tips will cover chapter 7 and 8, and they'll probably be a couple months from now, maybe a month or 2 from now before that hits, all right? Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.